Hello, and welcome back to our journey through the book of Job. Today, we're diving into chapters 25 and 26, where the conversation takes another fascinating turn. We've just heard Job's powerful defense, and now it's Bildad's turn to speak again. This will be his final speech in the book, and it's surprisingly short. Bildad starts in chapter 25 by painting a picture of God's immense power and majesty. He asks, "Can a mortal be righteous before God? Can one born of woman be pure?" He points to the heavens, saying that even the moon isn't bright, and the stars aren't pure in God's sight. Then he compares humanity to a maggot or a worm. Now, this might sound harsh, but Bildad is trying to emphasize the vast, unbridgeable gap between a holy God and flawed humanity. His point is, Job, who are you to question a God this magnificent? It's a classic argument, focusing on God's greatness to silence human complaint. But it doesn't really address Job's specific suffering or his cry for justice. It's a general truth, but is it the right medicine for Job's pain? This brings us to chapter 26, and this is where it gets really interesting. Job responds, and his words are just dripping with sarcasm. He starts by saying, "Wow, what a help you are to the powerless. How you've saved the arm that has no strength. What wonderful advice you've given to the one who lacks wisdom." You can just feel the frustration in his voice. He's essentially telling Bildad, "You've said nothing new, nothing helpful. You're just repeating old truths that don't apply to my situation." Job is tired of these generic, textbook answers. Then, Job does something incredible. He takes Bildad's theme of God's power and completely runs with it, but in a much more personal and detailed way. He's like, "You want to talk about God's power? Let me show you what real power looks like." Job describes God's control over the realm of the dead, Sheol, saying it lies naked before him. He talks about how God stretches out the northern skies over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing. Think about that for a second. The ancient world understanding that the earth is suspended in the cosmos. It's poetic and scientifically profound. Job continues, describing how God wraps up the waters in the clouds without them bursting, how he sets a horizon on the surface of the waters, marking the boundary between light and darkness. He talks about the pillars of heaven trembling at God's rebuke. He mentions God's power over the sea, defeating the mythical sea monster Rahab. The imagery is just epic. Job is painting a picture of a God who is not just distant and majestic, but intimately involved in the very fabric of creation, from the highest heavens to the deepest seas. And here's the most powerful part. After this grand, sweeping description of God's might, Job concludes with this line, "And these are but the outer fringe of his works. How faint the whisper we hear of him, who then can understand the thunder of his power." Job is saying that everything he just described, everything Bildad tried to describe, is just a tiny whisper. It's just the edge of God's true glory. We can't even begin to comprehend the full thunder of his power. So what's the takeaway here? Bildad tried to use God's greatness to shut Job down. But Job takes that same greatness and shows that he understands it far better than his friends do. He sees a God who is both terrifyingly powerful and intricately creative. And even in his deep suffering, Job's awe for this God hasn't diminished. He's not questioning God's power. He's questioning why that power is being used against him. He's wrestling with the reality of a God who is both good and all-powerful, yet allows immense suffering. These chapters beautifully set the stage for God's eventual appearance, reminding us that our understanding of God is always just a faint whisper of the magnificent reality. Thanks for joining me for this discussion. It's a deep and powerful passage, and I hope it gave you something to reflect on. If you found this helpful, be sure to like the video and subscribe so you and miss our next part in the story of Job. See you next time.